Hi, Gretchen. Thank you so much for joining us on the Next in Line podcast. We're so excited to have you on as our next guest. Now, before we get into everything, I want you to kind of introduce yourself to the audience and take us back to the beginning of your career. How did you get started in marketing?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for having me. My name is Gretchen Freemyer. I'm based in Atlanta. My career really started, honestly, in college. I started as an exercise science major. I thought I was going to be a collegiate volleyball coach, and then I thought I was going to do corporate health and wellness. And so I got a master's in exercise science and a minor in psychology. And honestly, the minor in psychology is kind of what kicked off everything else. So I started off at a small private Christian school teaching volleyball. And then I decided while I was there to get my master's degree in public health because that's the direction I thought I was going.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is amazing, working a full-time job, getting my master's. And what I started to uncover is that my master's was really about what is the psychology behind getting people to make healthy choices. So there's lots of information out there, but it's how do you actually get people to change their behavior? And
Yeah.
so what I thought was going to be more about public health was actually about human psychology and how do you storytell,
Yeah.
which shockingly has marketing written all over it. So after I got my master's, I went into a marketing sales job and also even just a patient care coordinator for a small prosthetics company. And honestly, that was one of the most fulfilling jobs, if not the most fulfilling jobs I've ever had, of just getting to walk through really hard seasons with people. I think it taught me a lot of perspective. But while I was at that job, what I started learning was, this company had been around for 20. They had this amazing story around making it possible. They're helping people get their lives back. And I went to a conference for healthcare marketing. And the guy said something like, everyone in healthcare has it so easy. You guys aren't trying to sell Cheez-Its. You're not trying to sell toilet paper. You are selling something that has a human story and a human element baked into it.
Yeah.
And so I just remember getting back from that at that conference and being I've got to do something with this. I felt so on fire about it. And so then I ended up getting a certification called, it's through StoryBrand. So I was a StoryBrand certified guide that essentially is just teaching you the art of telling a story. How do you actually capture attention? How do you tell a story in a way that doesn't confuse people?
Yeah.
And so I went through that whole certification. I came back and I was like, hey, can I help rebrand this company because it's been around for 20 years. Let's do this. You guys are doing amazing things. So I did that. They ended up rebranding, got to do some amazing video testimonials that played into this new theme and story that they were doing. And I kind of fell in love with marketing in that process. And for me, it's about storytelling. And that company ended up getting acquired. And I was looking, how can I increase my marketing skills and know-how even more? So then I ended up changing jobs. I went to work for a small agency called Mojo Media Labs. I started out as an account manager just because I was there's a lot. I know marketing in this tiny little vacuum, but all the acronyms around CRO, SEO, SEM. And I was what the heck is going on? And I was I really need to learn. So I started at that job, had an amazing strategist that I worked under, and really got mentored in that role. Then I ended up becoming a marketing strategist. So helping companies kind of develop their own go-to-market and ABM strategies. And then from there, I kind of accidentally / purposely, I don't really know, wandered into a sales role. And that sales role and the growth, for me, I think people have a terrible impression of salespeople because it's all slimy and they're trying to get you to pay for something you don't need. And for me, again, it comes back to that storytelling piece of let me genuinely listen to the problems that you're trying to solve. And what I've learned from talking to CEOs and CMOs is everybody's kind of having the same problems. And so my job in that room is to really just listen and craft a story of like, how can we actually help you go from point A to point B? And so that's kind of where I am today. I lead growth, business development, and some marketing for a global agency. And it's been great. I'm learning a lot. I always say if you're in a job, you should be learning, earning, or growing, or some combination of all three. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Wow, I love it. And I think your background is definitely super interesting. Not the traditional way you kind of get into
No,
marketing, right?
no.
Really super different. Not everyone hears that. But what you mentioned about the psychology, you know, and that's what really got you into it. At the end of the day, marketing is all about studying how the audience or humans are going to connect with the brand or connect with the product, right? So I think like
Mhm.
being that that's the core of how you started getting into it, it just makes it 10 times better, right?
Yeah.
Um, and being that you did kind of come from that public health, right? Psychology background, science background, what kind of drew you? I know storytelling was one of the main points, but how did you kind of navigate shifting from having that mindset and getting into like marketing and technology and sales? Because that's a bit of a transition throughout the career there.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of it is as a person, I think I really enjoy a challenge. And so I think while telling stories and marketing things in healthcare is very easy, I think it starts to be okay, like we're a technology company trying to adopt this, and it's
Yeah.
not a straightforward linear path. And so I think like I kind of find myself drawn to the challenges of like how can we take something that's more complex and really simple. And I think like I mean I played collegiate volleyball, so I have this like competitive edge in
Yes.
me as well of whether it was waiting tables when I was 15 and they would come out and they'd be like, all right, we need to sell X amount of these dishes. And I'm like, all right, game on. Like, what's the psychology of like, how do I sell this dish? What's it taste like? Like, who's
Yeah.
my ICP? And I'm like, I'm doing that as a waitress. So I think for me, just at every step in my career, I found myself coming back to like, what's the next challenge and the things that I can sell? And it still revolves around storytelling, but ultimately, I think it boils down to like a curiosity, and a curiosity and a humility of like, I don't know everything about
Yeah.
this space. Like anybody who claims to know everything is not telling the truth
Yeah.
or just has like an inflated view of themselves. So I think for me, it's like, okay, let me stay curious about these industries and things that I don't know anything about. And as I'm going through this and learning, like, how can I challenge myself to go beyond like what's straightforward and simple and maybe feels easy, because as you learn those more complex industries or complex challenges like that, there's a waterfall effect of that makes selling the easy things or telling or marketing the easy things easier because like you've done something complex, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think like the more you take on a challenge and you are curious in the field that you are in, right? Regardless if it
Hmm.
is it's marketing, if it's, the health
Yeah,
side that you came from, it all kind of impacts each other when it translates into business. Because if you're not doing that, I feel like you're not growing. You're not,
absolutely.
not going for the things that you want to go for. I mean, I'm the same way in terms of like, I love a good challenge. I grew
Yeah,
up in competitive sports as well. I feel like that
yeah.
also translates, right?
Yes.
So, kind of having that mindset, right, is what makes it kind of all come together, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking about mindset and kind of how that translates into everything that you do today, what are some key points you could say on the health and science part that you came from or, background that you came from kind of affect the approach you take in your role currently, especially as a leader? Because now you're leading a team in marketing, growth, and sales. What are some
Yeah.
things that kind of overlap there?
I think you're going to hear a theme a lot in this chat. And I think it's like a curiosity and humility. So, like in health and wellness, like I mean, we've all seen it. There's a million different trends coming out. There's a million different ads coming at you of you need to try this. And now there's new science. And now there's this.
Yeah.
And so I think what I've learned is you can't know it all. And so what do you do with the information that you have today? And so I think in an industry, whether it's marketing, whether it's health and wellness, whether it's AI, whatever it is, there's a million different things being developed at one time. And so you can't you can't be on top of every single trend. It's hard to kind of deduce like what is working, what's not working. And so the only way, in my opinion, is like you've got to take some stuff and try it and be willing to fail. And you can't let the failure define you. You've kind of got to take it and say, okay, what did I learn from that? And how can I move forward? So I think, is really just being able to adapt to change and new information and pivot from what you think honestly.
Exactly. You are spot on with that. I love how you said that, like, that failure, you can't let that define you. And it's true. Like, I think nowadays a lot of people have this fear of failure, but if you're not trying something out and let's say it doesn't go your way, that shouldn't stop you, right?
No, not at all.
Literally keep you going and kind of motivate you. Okay, so if that didn't work, what's the next solution? Like you're saying, pivoting and transitioning and trying out the new things so that you can get to a solution that works best in business, in marketing, and whatever it may be. And kind of transitioning now in our conversation into that, I think that now with the rise of AI, I know it's a big part of your world. We talked a lot about that in our previous conversation. And I wanted to ask you, for you to share with the audience, when did AI kind of become part of your world? And what was a moment when you realized how powerful it could be in marketing and even in sales?
Yeah. Okay. I think about a year and a half ago, I started hearing, it was probably around way before that. I started hearing about ChatGPT. We need to use AI, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not going to lie, I was a huge skeptic. I'm like, for being a millennial, I'm like pretty anti-technology. Like I don't have TikTok. I don't have any of those things. I was like, oh my gosh, please do not give me like another software or tool that I have to know how to use.
Yeah.
And also like storytelling and like the human experience. And like, I still believe in all of those things, but I like would not touch it for probably like 6 months. And then I think I said this in the last call. I'm a team of one. So I handle kind of like growth for a specific division within Gravity. And my saying that I keep coming back to is desperation breeds innovation. And so I would have weeks where I would have multiple proposals and I just like had this thought of like, man, it would be really nice if I could like clone myself a little bit to like be able to get more of this work out.
Yeah.
And obviously didn't do that. I'm sure one day, scarily enough, that will probably be like a possibility, but that day is not today. And so I think I just started messing around with prompting in ChatGPT, and I got some really good advice early on that was treat ChatGPT like the smartest person you know. And so I think as I started to play around with it, it's not like, hey, write this email for me. Tell me what to do about this. And so while most people were using prompts that were one sentence or a couple words, mine were paragraphs of like, I'm thinking about this problem this way, and the audience is this, and they really care about this, and these are the pain points and challenges. And then as we started to have more standardization around like, we're recording calls and stuff like that. Great. Let's take that transcript as context to then upload into this chat GPT. And so then from there, I started getting really into custom GPTs because ultimately it's like, it's the knowledge and the experience that you're feeding AI that I think helps get the best output. And so in marketing and sales, I've really seen it transform the speed to which you can get to an idea. And then also in the sales world, it's like, it's so great if you give it the context of like, this is the challenge. This is the pain point. How can I summarize this in a succinct way? And so I used to say this thing all the time of, if you're an expert in your field, you have a curse of knowledge, meaning you're going to over explain, you're going to overcomplicate it because you know it so well. And that's amazing. But then when you're trying to explain it to someone who doesn't do that, you might be using a bunch of acronyms. You might be using these phrases they've never heard of. And so I think AI, my favorite way to use it nowadays is like, that's great. Explain it to me like I'm 5 years old.
Yes. That is literally the best way. I use that as well.
Yes. Yes. And it's like a game changer. And you're like, wow, I wish I thought that. And then, that kind of helps you be like, okay, I don't actually need to overcomplicate it in order to sound smart. Like, I just need to say what the point is.
Exactly. And I feel like that's a way where we should be leveraging AI instead of people kind of being afraid of it. Like you're saying, like right now, it's not replacing the jobs that we are currently
Mhm.
in, especially in marketing and sales and whatnot. It's kind of elevating it and helping us become more efficient and educating us in a faster way, right? I mean, now
Yeah.
we could literally ask ChatGPT, like you said, like, tell me like I'm a 5-year old and it's super
Mhm.
simple to understand.
Yeah.
And speaking about actually this whole AI track, right? Now, we mentioned it's not replacing yet, but there's a fear
Mhm.
that AI could potentially kind of replace creativity in the marketing world. What's your take on how marketers can keep that human connection alive as this technology continues to evolve?
Yeah, this is like the hottest question in the marketing world right now. I was actually on a call yesterday where like I had a bunch of creatives on the call and we're all talking about like how is this progressing? And I
Yeah.
think like one there is a validity to the fear of like what used to take you days or weeks is now taking like a couple hours or even minutes in some cases. And so I've read an article recently that it was like humans are using AI so much that we're starting to talk like AI,
Yeah.
which is a little scary. And so
Yeah,
I
that
think
is.
one the challenge is like, are you using AI to turn off your brain, or are you using AI to enhance like your strategic thinking or thought patterns?
Yeah.
And so I think if you are using AI to shut off your brain, you should 100% be concerned that like it will take your job. But if you're saying like, that's a great starting point, here's what I think about this, or I used to do
Mhm.
this, and like you're actually using your personal human experience, your lived experience, or maybe that's even the experience of others that you've gathered from stakeholder interviews or research or
Yeah.
whatever it is. If you're using that as the base of how to use I mean, AI AI is like very philosophical in the way it's like, if this, then that, if this, then that. The
Yeah.
human experience is not that way. It's like we live in a world of gray, we live in a world of contradictions, and the contradictions and almost even like the struggle between those is actually where you find like the hidden meaning. And
It's
right now, like humans excel at that. And again, if you're using it to turn off your brain and you're just like, send this email, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I don't have to think about it. And you're not actually using your own brain power to be like, okay, like who am I sending this email to? Like, what was that thing that they said in the call? Or what was the thing that they said? You're just kind of on autopilot. And I think that's
yeah.
the risk of like humans going like a little brain dead because they're just like, okay, this thing will do it for me.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so yeah, I think the more that you can infuse your own human experience and really challenge yourself every time you use it. Am I using this as a crutch to turn off my brain? Or am I using this to elevate an idea or thinking or experience that I already had? And I think if it's the latter, one, you get better results, but two, like AI can't replicate your brain. It can't
Exactly.
replicate your experience. So I think that's kind of like the caveat of there is that risk, but it's really up to like, again, curiosity, humility
It
of
all
how
goes,
you're using
yeah.
those tools.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, you know, people who maybe are afraid of it can take that approach, like you're saying, like actually talk to it and kind of go back and forth with it and use, your brain and your thoughts to get the best outcome. Because, like you're saying, if someone's just like, hey, write this email and it writes the email for them and they send it off to, let's say, a client or a person, whoever it might be, and they have no idea what the email says, like, and it's just, with all the hyphens and the this and the that, that ChatGPT does, then
Hmm.
not necessarily, leveraging it to this full capacity like you can.
Right.
And I feel like that's what a lot of people do too. Like they're on autopilot, like you're saying, but it all goes back to the prompting and you creating like
Hmm.
these custom GPTs and whatnot can really boost efficiency. ChatGPT or AI in general become your thought partner rather than
Yeah.
just you solely relying on it.
Well, and I think like what you were saying too, it's almost like I've been on a lot of calls where it's like if you have the call recorded and it's kind of like, hey, like Gretchen, like what'd you get out of that? And if you're just like, oh, the AI is recording for me and you're just like checked out, you can't actually respond. in
Exactly.
that moment. And so it's almost like you sometimes, I think, even need to challenge yourself of like, hey, one day a week, I'm going to go without AI and see what I can learn or what I can conjure up that's separate from this thing to then to just like make sure that your brain is not like ultra dependent on this like amazing tool.
Yeah, yeah. We don't want to create a dependency. We want it to kind of level it up, like for
Exactly.
us, everyone, even teams, everything.
Yep.
Can you share, or are you open to sharing an example of kind of how you created a GPT that, you know, was a problem at first and you kind of created a solution out of it?
Yeah, so I'll use my own kind of like personal LinkedIn for this. So a couple of months ago I was like I would have this note in my phone and I everybody has like their time of day that they get inspired or they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is something I want to share." So mine was always like in the shower, after the shower, and so I would like get on my phone and I'd be like, "I want to talk about this," or like I really learned this. And so I just had this long list in my phone of these are things that I'm really passionate about that I want to share. And so I was like, I really need to get better at posting on LinkedIn. And I think I would go in LinkedIn and I would be so overwhelmed by the amount of content. And it's like everything's kind of sounding the same. And so what I ended up doing was I created a custom GPT with my voice. And so how you do that is like you take your own so like for example I could take this podcast recording and take the transcript and upload it and say like, hey, this is my voice, these are the things that I care about. I went through actually a personal branding exercise a couple months prior, and the output of that was like, what's my mission, vision, values?
Yeah.
And so I ended up kind of building that out. So I would upload that into the GPT. I would upload either things that I've written or authored or spoken, and kind of said like, take all of this. What is my personal brand? What are the things that I care about? What are phrases I hate? What are phrases I love? What are the messaging pillars that I want to go back to? And so it's created from that a custom GPT. So now when I have these like shower thoughts of like, the one I had yesterday was like, one of the concerns I have about AI is that we're gonna elevate speed over precision.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's in my notes. Like coming to a post near you, there's going to be some kind of thing of like, hey, my ChatGPT is called the voice of Gretchen. So I'll kind of say like, hey, I'm having this idea and this thought of like, I'm really concerned about some of the things that I'm seeing of how we went from Amazon culture and like our attention span and like how AI is enforcing this like impatience around like how do we get from point A to point B faster, when some ideas and honestly even life itself, the path is not linear, and
Yeah.
AI is like incredible at making things linear, but that's not a true lived experience. And so I'll take a thought like that and I'll be like, I want to write a LinkedIn post about it. And so it's my passion, it's my thought, it's all the things, but I'm using AI to kind of help me brainstorm it. So I treat it like an intern or like a junior copywriter that like works on my team that I don't have, all the things. So that's just like a small example of how I'm using it right now.
And I love that example because personal branding is huge. It's bigger than ever, honestly, nowadays. Without that, I mean, how are people gonna know who you are, who you work
Exactly.
for, all of that? So kind of making GPTs for personal branding could be efficient because there's no excuse anymore. I'm like, oh, I don't have time for that, or I can't do this. It's too much thought. I'm not creative. But anyone can kind of do that if they have a GPT built in, just like yours. It's
Yeah, and
crazy.
it's like we all are passionate and we have things that we love to talk about. And so to me it's like that's where the magic happens, is you're not just saying like I'm going to be a bump on a log and like ask it what to write today. I'm going
Yeah.
to say like these are the things that I care about. And I mean you can do that for so many things. You can do it for deep research, you can do it for synthetic audiences. Like there's so many use cases, but all of it starts with like curiosity,
Yeah.
humility, and like for you, for personal branding, it's like, what am I passionate about? So that way your unique voice doesn't get lost in the sea of like never ending LinkedIn content that all sounds the same.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. And kind of, transitioning more into the leadership side. and the talking towards the next generation, we know your path hasn't been linear. And I want to know, how has that shaped the way you lead and mentor others, especially when they're navigating change? Because I feel like that's something people don't really talk about.
Yeah. I mean, I think when we were talking earlier in the session, I think failure is actually a better teacher than success. So I can think back in my own career of like when I wasn't necessarily happy when I was working at a small private school and I was like, this is not fulfilling. And so I think you can learn more in like ways that you're dissatisfied or maybe you're not fulfilled, and just like taking an internal note of those things of like, what am I feeling? What is it that I actually want? And like taking stock of like, when do I come alive? And I think the other thing is too, is like people get caught up in titles and progression. And like I've had four different job titles in 4 years. And like I think a lot of people look at that and they're like, oh my gosh, that's insane. But
Yeah.
it is a little insane. But I think the other piece is, you know, your impact is not dictated by your job title. And something that I discovered in my own branding exercise is like, whether I'm in marketing, whether I'm in sales, whether I decided to be a gardener, like that would be a terrible career for me. I have a black thumb, but it's like, what drives me is impact. Am I
Yeah.
leaving things better than I found them? And so if you're an account manager, if you're an intern, if you're in college, like whatever it is, I think that question is like, am I leaving things better than I found them? And to do
Yeah.
that, guess what? You need curiosity and humility to do those things. But I think it's like being willing to accept that every stage in your career, you're learning something that you're going to take with you into the next phase. There are things that I learned waiting tables that I am using today in
Yeah.
a sales career. There's things that I learned working at a private school, like dealing with parents and donors and all that kind of stuff that I took into this career. There's things that I learned as an account manager that influenced the way that I created strategies or how I sell. There's strategies that I created. So it's like, I think about it even from a sports analogy of sometimes you might have a specialty player on the team. They're awesome. You put them in, they can do this one thing really, really well. But in my opinion, I think it's better to be a utility player, meaning like if someone looked at you and said, hey, Karina, like we need you to do these 5 different things. And you're like, great, I can do it.
Yeah.
You're infinitely more valuable because you can do those things. And that's not to say you shouldn't have specialties or areas of expertise. But I think the willingness to get your hands dirty and do things outside your job description is pivotal in your career growth.
Percent. Like you couldn't have said it better. Like I always talk about this with, people even in this next generation, because I am next gen. I'm Gen Z, right? So I have people that come to me and like friends that are like, hey, I'm out of college and I'm trying to look for a job, or I'm out of my master's program, and they apply to something and they're like, oh, but it's junior level position, and it's like that shouldn't matter, right? Like
Yeah.
the title does not matter. I talk about this all the time. So the fact that you said that, I'm like, it is so, so true.
Well, and like you've got to start somewhere. Like,
You can't just like
of
jump,
course, like,
director, like level.
yeah.
I don't even know.
There's like, I mean, there are like baristas that I feel like are intentional. And like when you go get your coffee, they're like, hey,
Yeah.
what do you do? How'd you get there? And it's like that kind of attitude, I think, speaks volumes to like the character of the person. But I think there's that instant gratification culture. And I'm guilty of it too, of like, I want the next thing. I want the next
Of
thing.
course.
But I think what we forget is like, you do actually have to start somewhere. And it's a problem when you're the smartest person in the room. It's a problem when you're like starting your career out and you're at the top of the food chain. Like that is not fertile ground for growth. So I'm like, get someplace, regardless of title, regardless of pay, that
Yep.
you can learn and be mentored, and the growth will come with that.
Exactly. I feel like as a agency owner myself, when I'm hiring people internally, that's something that I look at too. Like, are
Mm,
you willing to, get your hands dirty, kind of pivot, grow, and do things that are kind of outside of that, job description? Because at the end of the day, I'm in startup mode too with my
mhm.
company. And in startups, you gotta pivot, right? So you gotta have people that are on board to do that. But I think, that's something that I really look for. So
Yeah.
people that can kind of get in there. I'm in there. My hands are dirty, even though I'm, the
Yeah,
owner.
you've got to do everything.
You got to do everything. You got to wear multiple hats. So that's something
Mm-hmm.
that's my mentality too. And I think it all goes back to what you're saying. We keep saying it on this podcast, like curiosity, humility, like, having that mindset so that you can grow later on in your career.
Well, I think like too, those are leaders that you want to follow. So
Yeah.
like I commend you for having that attitude. It's like I was at a conference a couple weeks ago and the chief innovation officer of our company, I was just like taking little tags and putting them in like plastic because like that's how I could help out in that
Yeah.
moment. And he came and he's like, he's C-suite at the company. This is like by all means like super above his job.
Yeah.
He just came and he was like, how can I help? And I was like, I'm just putting these in. And so I think like those are the leaders that people want to follow of like, they
Exactly.
take the chip off their shoulder. It's not this I'm better than you. And there's always this like, there's just willingness to help out the people of like the jobs that aren't glamorous. And I think that's a mark of maturity and growth when it's like, you remember your roots. Like if you
Yeah.
waited tables, you remember bussing tables and when someone was mean to you and how nice it is when someone extends like a small kindness for a job that's like maybe not your favorite thing to do.
Absolutely. No, I'm loving this. So,
So,
now kind of reflecting to your younger self, what's one piece of advice at the start of your leadership journey that you would give yourself back then that you didn't know?
oh gosh, I think it's got to be around patience. I feel like I'm one of the most impatient people I've ever met. And I think hindsight for me has always been 2020. So I think like what I would tell myself is like calm down a little bit of like you'll get there and stay patient because I think like I had the ambition, I had the curiosity, all of those things, but I think at every stage in your career you've got to be willing to take a step back of like there were things that when I was early in my career that afforded me more time to like hang out with friends or do other things. And like you can't take that stuff for granted. So I think I would say to myself, like, be patient. The journey is never going to be linear. Slow down and possibly even like pause to celebrate the wins. Like,
For sure.
I remember saying to my husband, I'm like, I'm so bad at stopping and being like, okay, I said I was going to do this thing a year ago and now I did it. And instead of stopping and saying, like, that is so awesome, like, thanking the people around me who helped get me there. It's like, okay, what do I want to do next? And
Yeah,
so
like
I
what's
think,
next step?
yeah, so I think in an environment where it's like you're always being pushed to look towards the next thing, it's like, can you just pause and be grateful? And like, I'll probably listen to this back over the course of my life and be like, oh yeah, I still need to take that advice. Like,
Yeah,
still haven't gotten there yet. But I think that's ultimately like the biggest thing. And it's hard. Like, it's
it is
really
hard.
hard for me. That's why I'm saying it.
No, yeah, I feel you on that. I'm still early on in my career and a lot of people tell me that too. Even my internal team,
Mm,
my family, they're like, you also have to realize like this is crazy, right? The things that, let's say, little small wins, you have to take a second to like, you know, kind of celebrate those, like you're saying, because I'm always in like go, go, go mode. Like, this is what's next. I
mhm.
know we have this to do, but lately I've been trying to put that in practice myself. So maybe I will
Yeah.
also listen to this and your advice
Yes.
whenever
Share
I'm
tips.
in.
Yeah. Yeah. Share tips. Because I'm also like, I listened to a speaker a couple days ago and she was saying something of like, do you put the same intentionality in your personal life that you do your career? And I think, especially like if you're a career driven person, it's so easy to set these like amazing goals and standards for yourself. But then, like, if you're putting all of your effort and time into your career, maybe you're like eating out every night and you feel terrible because you're eating out every night, or maybe you're relationship is in a good place or your family misses you or whatever. And so I think that's the other piece too. It's like you've constantly got to be weighing the trade-off of like, is this worth it in my real life? Because like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you could build an amazing business, but like if your personal life is terrible, like it's going to be lonely. And so I think you have to kind of pause and take stock of like, what is the tax this is taking on my personal life and personal growth? Is it worth it? Is this for a season? Is this for a specific reason that I'm doing this? And like, you got to just be really, I think, intentional about that. That's, again, probably a lot of advice that I could take myself as well.
No, I love it. It's so true, though. It's very, very true. And now, as we wrap up this podcast, that I've had so much fun, talking with you. The one thing we like to ask everyone, and this is our pay it forward question, right? Paying it forward to that next gen. So for anyone who's listening and, they feel like their background doesn't fit the industry that they may be in or getting into, what's advice that you would give them about creating their own lane? Because we've talked about it's not a linear path. So what are some tips you can kind of guide them towards?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is like, it's not linear. So what is the common thread? So if you're looking at like your life, your career as a storyboard, there's going to be different jobs, there's going to be different feelings. And so I think if you're a marketer, especially, like, use that as an opportunity to be like, what is the common theme in this
Yeah.
story? Where do I come alive? And so I think the path doesn't have to be linear, but I think the most powerful thing for the upcoming generation of like how to market themselves and how to sell it is like, what's the story? Okay, great. You've had 8 jobs. That's a lot, but like, you've had 8 jobs over the course of 4 years. What's your story? Is that because like I was so hungry and curious about this that I wanted to gather this information, and what I uncovered was like a deep passion for this, and that's how I got here? So I think people will say like, oh, don't job hop, don't do this. And I'm like, just have a story. Like have a point of view on that change. And I think for me, of what I've shared on this podcast, the thread, and this is true across my personal life, it's true in my career, the thread is storytelling.
Yeah.
Those are the things that I love in my personal life. Like, I'm a big words of affirmation person. I love taking time to like write these really meaningful cards to the people that I love. That thread is true in my career of like, that's what I followed. And that spans careers, that spans salaries, that spans job titles. So I think the challenge is like, look at the tapestry of your life and actually take some time to sit with it and say like, what's the common thread? What's the theme here? And like, that's a powerful exercise to do. And you can also do it with AI. I've taken a couple people through that of like, you're my career coach. If you're like, have a really hard time identifying your strengths or weaknesses, like you can take your brain dumping and like workshop it with AI and be like, what are the themes here of how I come alive? And it's fun. Like, that's a fun exercise to do.
Oh yeah. And I feel like with AI, you can just keep going back and forth with it, and you can continuously get like different responses, and literally, like you're saying, brain dump everything that you might want to talk about with someone into this platform.
Yes.
I love it.
And I'll like caveat that of like, also find a mentor too. Cause it's like, is like great at doing that. But I think if you can find someone with like the lived experience, and there's amazing mentors out there that I feel like have such a gift for just like listening to those things. And then, I don't know, there's something special about actually like co-partnering, and whether that's like a therapist or a person, like, I think my number one encouragement is like, don't get rid of the human element.
Yes.
But use AI as a tool to help you show up prepared to whatever that conversation is, and then like get into the brass tacks of it.
Absolutely. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I feel like we had such a great conversation. I think a lot of people will take a lot of notes from this. I know I am. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This was great.